And we've gone live. Welcome once again to our Thursday night Torah chat roundtable discussion of all things Torah and Judaism. I am your host, filling in for John Gishla. I'm James the Idol Smasher at gmail.com. And this is the Orphans of Avraham. Tonight, this week, it's Parsha Bo. Parsha Bo is, as you can see on the screen here, Exodus, starting with chapter 10, goes through 13, verse 16. Welcome, Bro Joe. And so if you want to follow along and kind of get the gist of the angle of what we're talking about, that's where you go. We're getting to the end of Moses's mission as far as getting the kids out of Egypt, and now the real fun begins. This is the easy part. I remember there was a line in the Moses, one of the latest Moses. It was actually not a half bad movie for Hollywood. It was Christian Bale, and I just remember when he was frustrated and saying, what do you want from me? What's going to happen? He goes, it's not your place. All you have to do is just watch, because I'm going to do the work now. And that's when all the plague started. I love that line. I love that line. I think one of the reasons why I'm really into this Parsha is because this is the ultimate fall of Egypt. And it's a sad case. I understand the Passover Seder when we remove blood from our cup and make 10 drops on our plate to remember that all blood shed for our freedom. With that said, Egypt had it coming. And in the Common Era, there's a lot more people who are going to have it coming too. This is, I go by the moniker, the Idol Smasher. This is when God does it. Okay, when God wants to smash an idol or wants to eradicate idolatry, I think this is the perfect Parsha to understand just what happens and why. And I'll bring up an old chestnut I like to bring up, and that's the 10th plague. See, Egyptians love the goat or the sheep, the lamb. That was their big god. That was what they worshipped. That was above the alligator. It was above the hyena or Jekyll or whatever. That was their ultimate thing. And I know that in the Western world, it's like the Passover lamb was for our sins. And so the devil will wash over us and we will be washed away into eternal damnation. And they'll say that one guy back 2,000 years ago, the carpenter dude who's real popular, oh, he is our Passover lamb. Well, if he's your Passover lamb, let me explain something to you. God commanded the Israelite people to turn Egypt's greatest idol into human excrement. Do you understand? This is not sweet and fairy tales and cherubs, soft, round, fat babies with wings and harps. No, this is not what it's about. The abuse that went on to Egypt was paid back in full, and the greatest god of all was turned into human poop. That is what happened to Egypt. And I think, honestly, I would not doubt if you were to look out in Egypt and if all these people saw the Israelites who actually tended their sheep and tended their livestock, had been at least for 400 years since Joseph had been around, is now devouring their God whole, except for the fats. You throw them on, all the intestines and stuff, but they ate it whole, and what they weren't going to consume whole, they threw on a fire and burned. Egypt's greatest God turned to poop. I know that's not a nice thing. We don't like to think of that. But why do you think he had him eat Egypt's greatest God? Why did Israelites do that? I mean, first, because God commanded them. End of story. Two, I think the real reason is, I think that helped bring on the plague. I think that was such an offensive, horrific act that I would not doubt if every Egyptian was vomiting and made sick to their stomach. It makes me
excellent point. Hey, that's an excellent point. And just to piggyback, or I should say land back off of that, no pigs in here, okay? Each one of those plagues is a direct attack on each Egyptian deity. You got the locust is an attack on Asar, the farmer deity. The blotting out of the darkness of the sun, that's an attack on Ra. Striking the earth with the lice, that's an attack on Geb. The boils is an attack on the god of medicine. Each one of those plagues is an asserting of a dominance I mean, even in Exodus 12:12, it says he came down and judged the gods of Egypt. So it's
Yep.
basically asserting the dominance over the Egyptians. And matter of fact, that lamb, you know what's interesting about that lamb, them worshiping I think Khnum, uh that's actually what happened in Elephantine. The Jews, I think that was who was that? It was the governor of Judah at the time, or Yehud, and he I think it was Halil. I forget his name. It was Halil something. He was teaching the Jews an Elephantine a Passover, and the Egyptians ended up going over there and destroying their temple because they were sacrificing lambs down there. And right next, like right off the shore on the other side of the river, was a temple to Khnum. So that created some conflict right there. We talking that's like I think that's like the the 5th century BC, somewhere around there.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it happened again.
So this is why I titled this week's Parsha, When Idols Shatter. And like you said, yeah, in chapter 12, he goes after the gods. In other words, he shattered them.
Yeah.
The images, they were turned to dust. They were turned to nothing. And I really dig this because personally, I love the idea of mankind's hubris and avarice being turned into rubble. I like the. I am not a happy man. I'm not happy with my species right now. I like the idea of these great accomplishments of men, because we have a tendency to abuse our power. So I like it when we get put in check. Egypt is a perfect example of an entire civilization being put in check. You know,
and you know what's messed up? Even the Israelites, they just wanted to be like the world so bad, because even with the bronze serpent that was supposed to just be used for that particular instance right there, you look in the book of Chronicles, they started burning incense to it. Then Josiah had to destroy it.
Yep.
it's like
Second Kings too.
Yeah, Second Kings. Yeah, it was like at first it was just supposed to be used for that, but we just couldn't help ourselves. They had to then start worshiping it, and then the moment that happened, it had to be destroyed. Yeah.
Brother Yochanan, across the pond.
What's happening, my brother?
What's on your mind about this week's Parsha subject matter, and anything you want to share as we start off?
Nothing much. I actually got back in the swing of things. I made a couple of new videos on the channel, couple of Torah studies. I found it interesting that the deity of the land represents the zodiac. You also that you were talking about the plagues represented a different Egyptian deity. They also represent a different zodiac sign in the constellations. I don't know if anyone ever picked that out or understood that or realized that the different yeah. So yeah, check that out. Got a couple of things going. I thought that was pretty cool. What else is going on? No, just taking it easy, man. Just listening to you. Man, what a hell of an opener.
Those are great videos too, by the way. And we're on that all last week. I couldn't stop thinking about is shooting beyond the stars, over the stars. You're not governed by them. I can't get that out of my head, dude. It's your fault.
Well, that's what. Yeah, so one of the videos I did where I talked about the zodiac signs is that what it means to be Hebrew, and what does Moses represent is Hebrew represents going beyond destiny, going beyond the stars, what is destined, and the zodiacs are sort of people believed, or the nations believed back then, the Gentiles used to believe that this is what governs the world. And this is how, you can look at, if you open, even today, you get the newspaper, you open up the comic section, and you can read your horoscope. Today I'm going to fall in love and, get blue underwear at the mall. This is what's my life. this is my life. And so this is what people believed. And so Hebrew means to go beyond that you're not controlled. You have free will, free choice, that you can create your own will and destiny. And that Moses means bracha, to draw down, or to bring down from heaven, blessings. So, the combination of the two. And then also Mitzrayim means strife, or Mitzrayim means kind of like a blockage,
Bondage.
right? So, bondage, blockage, and Pharaoh means like something that can't be undone. So if you think about it, Moses is the antithesis of Pharaoh, and Hebrew is Israel is the antithesis of Egypt, the complete opposite.
Very nice. Gav, are you there? Have you microphone capability? All right.
So what do we have a rundown of the Parsha? Do you have a nutshell? Chabad.org nutshell?
You can do a Chabad.org. I got the stone open, which
does Wade have any interesting insights?
Wade, we've got Rosalie and William.
William. We got a packed house here. We even got Avin. What's going on? Yeah.
Rabbi wants me to give him something. So,
oh, okay.
If you're in the side chat, if you could read the side chat in the room. There's a couple times. Go ahead. Who's talking?
No, unfortunately, I'm on a mobile device, and it kind of sucks. So
I don't want to read it on the air. It was a typo. Why do they put the X near the C key when you say "give me a second"? I don't know. I don't know. Parsha Bo. As this sidra begins, the climax of Moses' mission is impending. The last 3 plagues, the commandment to sanctify the new moon, thus laying the basis of the Jewish calendar and the festival cycle. The laws of Passover and the sanctification of the newborn are about to come in quick succession. Soon Pharaoh's resistance will be completely destroyed, and he personally will dash through the streets, seeking Moses and Aaron and urging his erstwhile slaves to leave the land of bondage as soon as possible. William's gone. Adios, William. The first plague of the Sidra, that of locusts, introduces a new element. God tells Moses in verse 2 that he intends to make a mockery of Egypt. God tells Moses, putting to rest the haughty presumptuousness of Pharaoh and his cohorts, so that not only Egypt, but even the children of Israel would know that I am Hashem. The inclusion of the Jews in that ceremony implies that even believing people are often imperfect in their faith, or believing that people are often ineffective in their faith. The Pharaoh had resisted the evidence of the divine origin of the plagues. It's not surprising, but it seems that even the faith of the Jews, strong though it may have been, was still not perfect. In fact, it was not until the splitting of the sea that the Torah testified of Israel that they had faith in Hashem and Moses, his servant. A brief rundown commentary out of the Stone Edition Chumash.
And yeah, just touch on that. That's kind of like what we see in this Exodus story, where there's a child. It's basically Egyptian deities versus Yahweh, and we see it even with the snake demonstration. You have Moses' staff turning into a snake. And showing to be more powerful than the other staffs that turn a snake by eating him up. Again, like you said, the mockery. It's like your son, you're the greatest of all your gods, Ra, can't even come out. I blotted out the sun. So how powerful can he be?
Mm-hmm.
And even the last one with Anubis, the god of death, did not save your firstborn. So it's basic. It is a mockery of the of Egypt. And
The area. Go ahead, dude. Go ahead.
yeah, even in the blood now, that is a direct attack on happy. That's like you mess up the now, you're really messing up a lot of things for Egyptian economics. I mean, it's
Yep.
I mean, it is serious. So you've attacked the sun and the now, two of the most important deities in Egypt, and made a mockery of them. That's exactly what it was.
Welcome, Aaron.
You know, what's also fascinating about the plagues is that the first seven were just recreations of already existing things. Like turning water into blood was just, molding something that already exists into something else. And this is what Egypt believed, that just existence was just, I guess, the most, the general pagan idea was that, the deities can just only remold things that already exist. But what's fascinating about the last three plagues is that they were created something. God created something new, and what's fascinating is that even when these things happen, even the magicians of Egypt, they claim this is not something we can do. We can't even perform this. This is from the hand of God, and then Pharaoh even testifies, this is from the finger of God. So, from the first plagues, God, Pharaoh's like, oh, who's God? I got a magicians. They can do. Oh, your staff can turn into a snake. Oh, well, I got guys can do that. No problemo. But when it comes to the last three, Pharaoh has to basically profess, yeah, there's a creator above the creators.
Amen. Let's see if I can get the last plagues we have. We have the plague of locusts. We have which ate everything. What was after locusts? It was darkness, wasn't it? Yeah, the ninth plague. There it is, darkness, and then of course the firstborn.
Yeah, what's fascinating is that, most people, the scientists, the atheists out here, they're going to be like, well, that's just the absence of light. You're not really creating actually anything, right? But if you actually read the Rashi commentary, it actually says this was a tangible darkness, that you can actually feel it. You can actually it smothered you.
Yeah.
It was like a real thing that existed.
It made you stay home. It made you sit down. It was hard to walk and move, let alone see. Go ahead.
I have a question. Why the firstborn?
Why Israelites firstborn?
Well, no, I understand that, but why? Why was it the firstborn?
Because it was the Hebrew firstborn. They got thrown into the pits of alligators. As far as I know, that's what I've been told.
Yeah, it is a retaliation to the
Would that be the sacred first name?
The genocide of innocent. It's basically
eye for an eye.
Yeah, that is somewhere around that route. But that it's interesting that Exodus story. I always, even though there's not necessarily physical archaeological evidence of it, I do find it interesting that when it comes to Israelites being oppressed, they're very accurate historically. It's like the Bible says the Arameans went and tried to go down there with King Hazazel. We have records of that. They talk about the Assyrian deportation. We have records of that. We have obviously the Judean exile. We have records of that. Then the Roman occupation. Then the Book of Maccabees. You have the the Hellenization period, right?
Mm-hmm.
This would be the only one where there's not necessarily confirmable evidence, but I'm like, they're shooting 4 for 4. Each group they said oppressed them, there's archaeological evidence. except for this particular one.
You should check out a guy by the name of David Rohl, Rohl. He shows some of the historical evidence to the Exodus. Caveat is he looked at it in a little bit of a different timeline than most general.
Yeah.
Yeah, the patterns of evidence. I saw that documentary. Yeah, the patterns of evidence.
Aaron, I am more than happy. Go ahead, man. Go ahead, real quick.
No, go ahead. You go.
No, I was just telling you. You might want to come back in. It's really, really choppy. Although we can understand, it's just really, really choppy when we hear you. So it sounds like a bad connection. Rabbi Gav over here says whether or not there is archaeological evidence for the Exodus. I think this is what Aaron was getting on too. Depends entirely on what time frame you think it happened. This is a good thing to bring up. Aaron was talking about it too. Scientists will put it about 300 years later than it would biblically, and it's an honest mistake. I'm not knocking archaeology. I think that when you have a consensus on something like that, it's a bit silly. I think that people are also taught that Jews are writing all religious fantasy, unicorn, fairy tale texts. They don't stop and think that they have kept good records. They're still here.
I mean, listen,
you put it 300 years beforehand, and with the Santorini volcano, everything. I mean, is that what you're talking about, Gav?
Now, you know what's interesting? The Bible is, before they found the archaeology, the Bible was the only place that talked about a group of people called the Hittites. For a long time, there was no archaeological attestation of Hittites.
Really?
The only source that was preserving a group of people called the Hittites was the Bible for a long period of time, until they eventually found some archaeological evidence and they found the records and stuff. But for a good a couple amount of centuries, there was no archaeological evidence of the Hittites. The only source for Hittites was the Bible for a long time.
Yeah.
So,
not just the Hittites, also the Amorites,
and I think the Philistines too.
Philistines were talked about in Herodotus, who was a Greek historian.
Oh yeah, he spoke. Okay, yeah,
a little bit. But Avraham was from the city of Ur.
Right.
The city of Ur was thought to be basically Narnia up until it was discovered in the 19th century. So it's another confirmation as well.
Right.
But there's a certain bias in modern day archaeology, and especially Egyptology. They recognize now that the chronology they use is not necessarily 100% accurate, but they still insist on using it. So you get this absurd thing where they use the Bible, ironically enough, to date the beginning of the Egyptian 22nd dynasty to about the year 945. But then they also use that to claim that the Bible is fiction, basically, in other areas.
Right. What was that with Shishak? With that Pharaoh Shishak?
Yeah, Shoshank.
Shoshank. Yeah. It's like, it's and even, but you know what? More evidence is coming out. And there's some scholars that say this now. Well, they'll say, we don't believe any of the narrative stuff in the Exodus story, but a lot of them will say, we think that story has some historical root. Like there's a Moses figure of some kind. They'll obviously say, hey, we don't think he split a Red Sea or did miracles or anything like that.
Right.
But they're now at least acknowledging, we don't think that this is just made up whole cloth fairy tale. A lot of historians are saying they think there's some kind of historical root, maybe some kind of Semitic leader fleeing oppression out of Egypt that took a couple of people with him. Like, they think it has some kind of root to it now.
Absolutely, and in a way that makes a certain amount of sense. As other ancient Near Eastern, lack of a better term, stories like the Moabite creation story, no group of people in history starts there. If you have to invent a fictional narrative for the birth of your people, no one chooses to be slaves to another people. No, no one writes their own story knowing that it's fiction and says we were slaves and we were brought out of this. So I mean, that kind of defies belief. But I mean, other texts from the ancient Near East are not treated with the same degree of scrutiny, and they have supernatural claims that most scholars would admit probably have some type of historical kernel to them. But for some reason, they maintain that the Exodus has to be an exception in perpetuity.
Jacoby, what's his first name? Jacobovic?
Simka Jakobovich. He's in front of me.
Thank you. Jacobo. Oh, really? No kidding. He seems cool.
Yeah.
He did the Exodus Decoded and demonstrated, and I thought very succinctly.
Yeah, that was a pretty good documentary he made. I don't personally agree with his particular spin on it, but he did a pretty good attempt. Yeah.
What do you think could be improved on on what he presented?
The time frame a little bit. I don't think the Pharaoh of the Exodus was Ahmose. I don't think there's a lot of evidence for that, and I think he makes some very big etymological mistakes that are, in my opinion, they're beneath him.
Are you talking about what Thutmose III?
No, Ahmose.
They go with the Hyksos thing, where the Hebrews are Hyksos.
Right.
I don't buy that either, right?
Yeah, me neither.
Now I'll tell you this. If you go with the what was that? 1 Kings 6:1, where it's 480 years before Solomon, right? That puts you in that 15th century BC range, right?
Right.
I'll tell you what's interesting. Thutmose III, firstborn son, did die.
Yeah, very suddenly and without a whole lot of explanation, at least in Egyptian records. It's just kind of they acknowledge it, but they don't really go into detail about it.
And when you look at the setup, when you look in the Exodus story, that Pharaoh was fearing that the Hebrews would have aligned themselves with their enemies. Well, their enemies at that time would have been the Hyksos that just left.
Right.
They
really?
They would have been the enemies. They just kicked literally. I want to say Thutmose's grandfather was kicking them out. One of the Hyksos expulsions with like 1500 something. This is just like maybe 2 generations after that. So you have Semitic groups of people that were just ruling Egypt for a couple hundred years, leaving. And now you have a growing population of Semitic people in Egypt. That Pharaoh in the Exodus was afraid of something that could happen again. It's like, we just got rid of this. We don't want it to happen. Let's chop them down to size. So there's too many correlations with that little gap between like 1600 BC and 1300 BC. There's a lot of correlation there.
Right.
But yeah, I think if you was to ask me, and even I'm not 1,000,000% sure, when you look at Thutmose III, they call him the Napoleon of Egypt, he kind of fits that Pharaoh as far as personality type, this rough, over militaristic person, very harsh, didn't like his stepmom at all, tried to erase. Now, here's another thing. We know he had a habit of erasing stuff from history because he tried to erase his own stepmom from history.
Right.
Who is this?
Thutmose III.
Right.
Okay.
His stepmom was one of the only female pharaohs that we know about, Hatshepsut.
A female pharaoh. Ooh, they were progressive. It's about time. I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, the people that came after her really were not a fan of the fact that they had a female pharaoh, including Thutmose III.
Yeah.
How far does that plant Yakovanovic? How far does Thutmose from Mose? What are we looking at here? The Exodus
That's
Decoded
his
is very
grandfather.
popular.
I think it's either his grandfather or his great grandfather.
Who's grandfather?
Tutmos the third. I'm gonna say I think it's his great grandfather. Hold on, let me
Okay.
see.
Okay.
Make sure.
Exodus Decoded is a very popular film. It was run on the History Channel a few times outside the premiere, which is they pushed for it, and it got got good views. But there are there's one, we mentioned his name. It was Aaron, I think. There was and then of course I brought up, Yakobovich. Get the name right. No, it's good to look at this. I mean, we the Western world, and I've been really nice lately. I've been really good the past few years, not being hard on my Christian brethren. But sometimes you got to get tough love, and I think one thing we're reminded of in this parsha is that tough love. There is a back and a front to Christianity. I'm not going to deny there is a yin and a yang. I know when Rabbi Asher's here, and he's very much in favor of good Christian American people, and you can't argue with him on that. However, with that said, I also believe there is a great poison, and it's going to bring about a Parsha Bo on us. It's going to bring about. We're only going to do it to ourselves.
I'll say this, and as a representative of, I guess, Messianic people,
the end of the gang.
Yeah, I will say this. I will acknowledge this. There is. Let me explain to you what that poison is. There is this dismissiveness of the Torah I don't understand in Christianity. I don't understand it. Where you bring up you say, hey, you're not supposed to do X, Y, and Z, and they will simply dismiss it. Well, that's the old covenant. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I mean, the people were still practicing Jews in the New Testament. Well, yeah. I mean, Gamaliel was Paul's teacher. One of the all-time, famous rabbis. So that is kind of a poisonous thing. When I talk to Christians and I say I do certain stuff, I say, hey, I'm following the Sabbath. I'm not eating no shellfish. I'm not eating no pork.
You got some quejones, amigo. Yes.
Yeah, like when I tell them I'm doing these things,
yeah,
there is how it's a spirit. You see the annoyed look on their face when you say you're doing the high holy days, you're doing Yom Kippur, you're doing the Feast of Tabernacles, you're doing all these things. They get annoyed. There's an annoying look that comes upon their face, and to me that is poisonous. I don't know why that happens, but it is strange. I'll give you that. It is strange.
Yeah, it's not what Jesus was saying. Heck, if you look at the Jewish stuff Paul's saying, same way he was saying. It's not what the Gnostic. We've got books that aren't canon that are acknowledged, like the Book of Mary. We've got the Dead Sea Scrolls, which include Thomas and Judas. We've got the Gnostic. We've got all this. We have all, and it's hard to argue with the man. It's hard. In fact, like I say, I would go to a wedding feast that Jesus was attending. I want that magic wine. I could talk Torah with that man for days on end, drinking wine and just talking Torah. Are you kidding me? What greater joy in life is there?
Yeah. Hey guys, so, I just wanted to make a correction on what you just said there, James. Thomas is part of the Nag Hammadi library, which is Gnostic, the Gnostic text, which is
that's right.
Like
in the Dead Scrolls, was he?
The Dead Sea Scrolls. Dead Sea Scrolls are uncorrupted writings, because they were hidden from Christians and they weren't edited. Actually, the text that they used from the Dead Sea Scrolls that contained scripture literature, they made a Dead Sea Scroll Bible. And I happen to read those scrolls, and it's amazing. If you want to read a revelation, like a real apocalyptic revelation, Judaism, purely Judaism, you read the War Scroll. It's amazing what they were saying, uninfluenced by Christian doctrine later. And going back to what I want to make a comment, the only person who said that the teacher of Paul was a well-known Rebbe was Paul himself. Right? Do we know anything about this guy outside of the
Gamaliel? Well,
probably not. The difference is these were Greco-Roman Jews following Christ, and a lot of the texts were written found years after Christ passed. So probably the only one that was really Jewish was James the Just in the book of James. And the way he was yelling at Paul in Acts, if you read it, like he brought Paul in, he was like, hey, you're doing all these other things. You're being accused by my fellow Jews of being all things to all people. What is that? Mm-hmm. I need you to come in and prove your Jewishness by taking the Nazarite vow. I want you to shave your head and do that in the temple. When he did, they knew what he was preaching to the Gentiles, which was a hypocrite, which is totally something different, all things to all people. And they lynched him from every, Christian readers. Oh man, he got lynched and dragged out of the temple. Nazarite vow is huge. Nazarite vow is huge.
That is the same. Yeah. I use that same. I actually use that same instance you're talking about, Alfred. When I talk to Christians about following the Torah, I was like, evidently he was still doing it. If he's doing this demonstration, I think that was the Nazarene vow or something. If he was saying, hey, throw this stuff away, the Torah's over, why would he engage in that ritual?
Why would he go to the temple and offer gifts and whatnot?
Yeah, like why would he do that?
I think the point of Christianity is half of Christianity itself. It's the indoctrination of eternal damnation, original sin. And I'm not even going to. I mean, it's when idols shatter. I'm not even going to get into the act. I'm talking about the teachings that permeate the religion as a whole. When you teach an entire society that that you're shameful, that you have no link to your Creator, that there is an eternal damnation if you don't believe certain creeds.
Now here's the thing. Now the eternal damnation.
You're going to point.
Right. Here's the fun part, though.
We have a rocket. We have reports in Israel right now. In Eretz Israel, we have a rocket attack. We are waiting for confirmation on that. But the app in Israel apparently has gone off, which is a warning siren digitally. You're breaking that. You heard it first right here on the Orphans of Avraham right now. We'll see what's going on with that. Go ahead, Alvin. I'm sorry. That was breaking.
No. Now here's what's interesting. The 21st century Christianity and the first century Christianity are almost two different religions altogether. They don't even, because like for example, when you look at this idea of, hey, when you die, you go to heaven or you go to hell. Yeah. There's no scriptural evidence for such a thing, like of dying and going to heaven.
There's no need in the entire what Christians call Old Testament. There's no need for eternal damnation, ever, or original sin. The whole point of Judaism is to teach you that He is right there with you. He breathes life into you, He breathed in Adam. He is that intimate. And what Christianity does, and the poison that is the religion, and this is almost, today I know we're getting much more educated people in the church, but the creed itself teaches of a disconnect with God that cannot be remedied unless you go through one guy. And when you read his teachings, he says to go through God. So,
I always say this is what I always say, this is what I do.
It's got to go. It's going to be Egyptified anyway. It's going to be the Vatican will be nothing. Will be a husk if even the husk survives. It's going to happen. It's too late at this point. It's too late. You're like one of those. I know you say you're Christian. Good fine.
Well, I'm not. I don't even like
read,
calling myself
think,
that.
You read.
Yeah.
You don't. You're not subject to creeds and beliefs and traditions.
Right.
You're subject to the word. You subject yourself to the word, whether it's of Paul or Christ or God
Moshe
himself via or Moshe or the prophets. That's a blossoming thing in Christianity. But the effects that we felt, I would say, starting about maybe 40 years ago, 30 years ago, those old world effects are still they're still what and we're gonna have to get the machete out. You know what I'm saying? It's
right. And you know, here this one interesting. So like when you read Josephus, right? He wasn't a Christian. His description of the underworld of Sheol or Hades, that matches exactly what you see in Luke, with the rich man, the poor man parable, where both are going down into Sheol. Lazarus did not ascend up into heaven. Both goes into Sheol. You got one side where people like this behave like this, and then you have the other side where the bad people go. And Josephus said something very interesting. He said, angels are stationed down there, not demons. There are angels stationed down there giving temporary punishments, not for beliefs, but for deeds. You give temporary punishments for deeds on the one side, and then on the other side. So they say all people go to Hades or Sheol, right? And you'll wait. That's what
I'm really glad you read that.
Yes.
I'm really glad you read that on Josephus, because a lot of people don't take the time to read. But that view was definitely affected by views of the Greeks, because when I read Homer and Iliad and the Odyssey, things like that come up where warriors die and they go to the underworld and it's a place. So there's even a part where Achilles is spoken to in the underworld, like the man is spoken to in the New Testament, and he's asked a question, and it's really interesting to see the give and take. Like, Achilles, hey, would you rather come back? And he said, yeah, I would rather come back. If you can look that up, I'm not sure if that's either in the Iliad or Odyssey, but it's in one of the two writings of Homer. But I'm really glad to hear that you read that on the dissertation on Hades by Josephus. That was an amazing text.
Gav says right here that Josephus is a very fascinating read. And Gav's big on history and whatnot. Welcome back, Aaron. Shalom again. How's your mic? Are you listening? Are you just listening? Are you cool?
Yeah, hopefully my mic's good now.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful, my friend. And since you got cut off, if there's anything you want to add, anybody, just talk. Yeah, I'm going to shut up now. You all talk.
Yeah, no, I just want to talk. Unfortunately, I do think there is a poison, though. When you said there's a poison,
rape and pillage a Celtic family and make them convert, and if they don't show up, you go and burn their village down. Yeah, that kind of shit's poison.
Yeah, and even within
that's 1,000 years, man. That's 1,000 years of absolute subjugation, particularly of mid European, but even up to
so let's use that example. You'll get raped if you don't convert. Will rape and pillage you. Now, when you look at what Jesus said, he said, "Hey, tell them the Gospels 2 times. If they don't accept, dust your feet and walk away."
Shake the dust off your feet.
Yeah, dust your feet off and walk away. That's it. It didn't say, and if they don't convert, you chop their heads off.
No.
There's a very, it just the I don't.
JC himself makes sense for his time, but what has developed from that? I mean, I feel bad for the guy, man. If he came down, I think he would level. He would Jericho. If Jesus was the guy that everyone says he is, he would come down and Jericho the Vatican. Is what he would do. He would give the modern religion a good swift kick in the nuts.
I'll even say this about Josephus, right? Even in the
Diana.
Christian, yeah, even in the Christian text, right? If you go to Revelations, again, it says in the last days, each person will be judged again, not according to beliefs, but according to deeds. You know, each person. It doesn't say anything about
Right.
beliefs in regards to judgment. Just like
Right.
what you see in Jeremiah, what was that, 17:10, where God tests the hearts and minds and judge people according to their deeds.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of gotten lost throughout
Absolutely.
the 2,000 years of Christianity.
Well, when you it's they brought in the Torah. They couldn't shut it out because they expelled a lot of Jews, and Jews were leaving Rome anyway. There's evidence I found out of first century Jews in the Britons, or whatever you call that chunk of island out there. So that means that there's actually quite a reach of Hebrew, you know, so when you expel them and they go out there and they start making sense to people, they starts clicking with people, then you got to include their book with your religion, with your political, socio-political, military agenda. It becomes part of it. What the sad thing for them that is that kernel is going to be the absolute destruction of the rest of it. It was born out of blood and strife. I don't give a shit what anybody says. Jesus wasn't born out of blood, but the Christian religion, Constantine forward, because anything else is Jew. From Constantine forward, you're gonna, in my opinion, I think that's you're gonna get. It's all about whittling. It's like what Michelangelo said: you whittle down the block until it gets what you need. Well, right now, mankind has the power and the courage and the means by which to whittle down that extra junk that's been thrown onto it for whatever reason. For whatever reason, it came to the world. It had to be the way it is. But I really honestly believe in my heart of hearts that we're getting rid of that zhush. We don't need the zhush.
I think the reason why Paul
Ross Bearden has joined the. By the way, I just got to say this because it's so rare that we see him. Ross, shalom, baby. Welcome. Good to see you. We're talking about when idols shatter and the breaking point of Christianity at the moment. We are on a Parsha talk. I am dying to hear from you, but we're going to let this conversation go for a minute. Wayman was saying something, so I'm going to turn the mic back over to you, sir. Go.
Yeah, I think the whole thing started to fall apart with Paul, actually, because he was so upset that he was not accepted fully into the Jewish community, and it burned him. So he went and got all the people who were standing in the back, the observers and God-fearers at the time. And I would say it was even before, I would say that James, when they killed James the Just, he was the last person to be authentic, Judaism crossing over, because Paul, now you get the bacon chapter with Peter. He's trying to compare clean with unclean and who gets in and who don't. And he sees clean animals in a vision and unclean animals. And then all of a sudden a voice says, all are clean. It's supposed to mean humans, but the bacon chapter. So now we get to eat bacon and like ham for Easter.
I'm so happy.
That don't make sense.
Here's the thing. Gentiles were never prohibited from bacon.
No, I'm so happy. Listen, I'm
so up, Gentiles. It's okay. God's not going to frown on it for you.
Alfred, I'm so happy you brought that up because he was talking about humans. The meat was just a symbolic thing in a dream. Peter actually interpreted his own dream later on. He was talking about not turning your nose up at Gentiles that's amongst you. That was the whole purpose of the dream. It wasn't, okay, Peter, go ahead and have a ham sandwich.
Yeah, but Paul says, right? Paul says that if you eat food sacrificed to idols and somebody has a problem with it, you shouldn't eat that because of their personal conviction. However, if you have no problem with it, it should be okay. So that's another thing. Like there are personal convictions. Like
I'll say this: a person could interpret it that way. I could see how somebody could interpret it that way, but it's like, listen, in defense of Paul, I would say the first century was a rough time for Jews. both internally and externally.
Just a wee bit. It wasn't the happiest of moments. No,
I mean, it's especially the temple had been somewhat compromised during that phase. Christians weren't the only people leaving the temple. You also had the Essenes that left the temple. People were dissatisfied with Caiaphas. They felt he was getting kind of too greasy with the Romans. So
it was. The whole thing was a sham. It was a sham from the get-go, and people caught on. It was as simple as that, you know.
So I think
Jesus saw.
I think it was through self-preservation, because they would have got leveled if they didn't comply in some way. But at that time period, they were seriously afraid of forced assimilation by the Romans, so they did not accept
God.
Right.
They did not accept Paul because they were super worried about his Greek-Roman influence. He was a Roman citizen. You're not going to let somebody like that just walk in. No way.
Yeah, I would say though, Paul's reaction is more, because remember, Paul was a hardcore Orthodox Jew, right? At first, right? Hardcore.
What we can agree of what we did, what everybody can agree with is Paul. Because some of that stuff is the book of Hebrews. I'm sorry, that just seems like a Roman hoax, if you ask me. Jew would write that. No Jew would write that. I can't find a Jew who would have written that in his time.
It was written to Jews on why the Christians think they should come over.
I'll put it like this.
That's what it was.
Okay, let me tell you the kind of Jew. Let me tell you the kind of Jew that would have wrote that book. Okay, a disgruntled Jew, angry with the corruption in the temple system, may have wrote that.
What is the prince of the air? Why does he say goofy shit like the evil one rules this world? That's goofy. Nobody rules. God rules.
It's like a letter to the Hebrews. So a Christian who is angry that Jews would not accept who they believe Jesus was writing that to Jews.
Paul was worried about getting accepted by Christians, remember? It wasn't necessarily him getting accepted by Jews. Remember,
Christians were Jews at the time. They were the same.
I mean, give or take. But as far as the Way sect, he was trying to prove his authenticity.
See, I have a hard time with seeing it that way. Like,
that's what he went to.
Up front, like I'm a non-believer. Like I have nothing invested in either belief system, right? But once they started seeing Christ as God or following him, they were Christians. You can't be Jewish and walk around with Jesus in your back pocket.
That's true.
You know, so there's no such thing to me. There's no such thing as messianics. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll say this.
Can't do it.
Hey, Ross.
I'll say this. You can't be messianic. I'll put it like this. They're ethnically Jews. They're ethnically Jews. They are not practitioners.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Right, of Judaism.
Yeah. They became earthly practitioners.
Although I would say, Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism.
The kernel's there. The kernel is conquering. The kernel is taking over. That kernel of Torah is bringing light to the Christian people. The Christian people are good people. But I think that if they don't take a machete to the weeds in the garden, if you'll excuse my French, we might have a problem. I want to bring Ross into the conversation. Ross hasn't been here in a while. Ross has been actually very busy, on top of recovering from a massive hurricane. How you doing? How you doing, Ross? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. God bless you. I'm so glad to see
thank
you. Anything you want to add? The Cobb topic now, but you look up on the screen and you also know the theme of the evening. Anything you want to share? Any ideas might be floating around, nuggets that we could. Goodness, go ahead.
I don't know. I'm just going to say it. I don't mean to offend anyone. It's just I've matured a lot lately.
Yeah, I dare you. Offend me. Please offend me. I'm so willing to be offended by you, Ross. Please. Go for it.
No, it's just I've come to the point now where I'm not going to fight anybody over where they stand. They're there for a reason and a purpose, and it's up to me to understand it. Every time that we've ever had a problem, it's somebody trying to convince somebody else that they're wrong. Everybody's definition of world peace is exactly the same. If you'll just see it my way, we'll have world peace. Doesn't matter who you talk to or which side you're on. They're all going to come from the same.
Can I steal that quote? Can I steal that quote? I'm going to use that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, go ahead.
I'll make one point. You've got Jews, Christians, and Muslims all standing around the same city named Jerusalem. And there is a mountain in the middle of the city called Moriah. And each one of the groups are pointing a finger saying, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. It's time to stop it. And for everybody to look at everyone else and say, it's ours. Ours. We're not fighting over it anymore. No one owns it. It is going, if it's ever going to be a house of prayer for all nations, then we need to stop fighting over something that doesn't belong to any of us. I'll leave it there. Please continue.
Two bald men fighting over somebody else's comb. That's how
no, it's yeah, or trying to split hairs with a bald man.
Yep. I like what you opened up with when you say, when it comes to world peace, we all have the same image in our minds.
I'm still in that quote.
That's good, ain't it?
I like that quote. That's a good quote.
Man. It's so good to hear from you again. Are you holding up down there? Are things get normal?
Well, we personally didn't suffer here from the hurricane.
Yeah.
We are in a position to, if this shutdown lasts for too long, we will be in a position to feel the effects of that. You know Rod, you know Nativ.
Mm-hmm.
He's had some health issues lately, so I've been facilitating off and on for the past couple of months, leading the group in Parsha study and such.
Thank you. Good.
No, he's in a position where he needs rest and recovery. He's just gone through some surgery, and I'm just trying to be there for him while he's getting back on his feet.
Rod, you're the man, and you are missed. So we want to see you again. I want to see another Parsha study. One of those wonderful videos we get out of Nativ. Why isn't Ross on the Nativ? See, we need to get Ross on camera.
Well, he's eliminated the camera videotaping of the Parshas. He's got enough of those on records that it's just doing the same thing over and over. What he's done now is, instead of lecturing and being, just the speaker and guiding, he's opened everything up to discussions. Everybody gets to contribute and add a viewpoint or an observation, commentary, whatever. And it's become very enlightening, very enriching for everyone. Everyone is more involved and more engaged. So there may be a video come along once in a while if something outstanding happens. But like I said, he's got several years of videos.
Yeah, he does.
Covering all of the Parshas. We've got some rabbis that are now engaging or will be engaging in and participating and conducting some teachings.
Good.
So it's gotten to be, it's transitioning, it's changing. And like I said, I'm a little bit out of place. I've never been one to get in front of a large crowd. Not that they're large anyway. But I'm just trying to hold things together until he can get back with us.
Well, thank you for that. And Brad, I wish you all the best. watching you when I went down to the Gear conference a couple years ago to meet Rabbi Cass for the first time, you were there, and I swear it was like, if you're watching, I swear it was like watching a celebrity. I thought I was in the middle of, and this is YouTube celebrity, okay? It tells you how much of a life I have, okay? And here's Rod Rubin talking, just shooting the breeze, cutting up jackpots, and I'm saying, oh, that's how I mean, that's him. I know that guy. I watch him all the time. It was, and he's the coolest dude. I mean, he's a Bob Dylan song. He really is. I mean, when I think of him when I hear Knocking on Heaven's Door, because he's law enforcement. He's a pastor. He understands the world and how it and where it connects. And I wish, Rod, if you're listening, and I know you're probably not, we have just a few viewers. You're the man, and we can't wait to see you again. I hope all goes well, and I'm sure all is in good hands when Mr. Bearden takes over.
I'll pass along your well wishes to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Ross.
Hello, Rosalie. How are you?
Running around like a chicken with my head cut off, but otherwise I'm good. I'm going back to work sometime soon.
Excellent. I wish you well.
Thank you. So good to hear your voice. Miss your face.
Thank you. You still have my number, and you're welcome to call at any time.
Yes, I know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Asher, welcome. And I'm gonna pronounce it is Uziyahu? Uziyahu? I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. Welcome to the orphanage, man. Oh, that's Wayman. Okay.
Is the Uziyahu that's on here the Uziyahu that I know?
Uziyahu ben Adi. But that must have been you. You joined the group chat and then you popped up. Let me see if I can get him down here. Yeah, there he is. Uzi, yeah. Wait a minute. Is that Uzi Does It? Is that Buford? If that's Uzi Does It, baby, I know who that is. If
I haven't seen him in ages.
I know, and he looks great.
Yeah,
he's got the Moses effect going on. I love that. I mean, I want to hang on to my red. I want to hang on to that.
Oh man, if that's him, I'm just gonna say hi right now. It's been forever since I said hi to him. So hello.
Welcome. We haven't seen you here yet, so yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and it's me.
Oh, it is you. That's awesome.
Hey guys.
It's a good night. It's a good night, man.
Yeah, everybody's showing up.
We've had a good night so far. We've achieved a dream. Okay. Well, hey, okay, so you see on the slate I've got up here, the Orphans of Avraham, When Idols Shatter. I've been after this Hanukkah, I've been very I've felt an Israelite warrior spirit. I felt a Torah warrior spirit in this, and I mean a warrior is in a sacred warrior, not just someone who wears a uniform, which would go with what the Parsha is about now. And this is I don't have his name up right now. This is the painting I'm using in the background is the Exodus from Egypt, and let me get his name. I can give you the name of that real quick, but I feared for a long time, and I want to be very open to my Western brethren. And as far as being good ethical people, I also know that this is coming for us. What you see up there on the screen right now is, I don't think we can hold it back at this point. At this point, it's just going to be, in my opinion, it's a matter of preservation and nailing stuff down before the storm comes. I have a bit of a fear for my brethren. I have a bit of a fear for the idolatry, for the curses upon Israel, which have been placed in the name of Christianity and Islam. Both are baseless. I think it's maybe academically we might agree with Islam more, but but you know, there are enemies there, and there's some nasty ass idolatry going on over there. Same with Christianity, and this is coming for you, my brethren. And it hurts. And you know what? I've got one foot in the nations and one foot in Israel, and I'm going to feel this. So I'm concerned for my own kids as well of what's going to befall. But I think that we're on, if we don't get our shit together, the shit's going to hit the fan, and it's going to be a lot of it too. It's going to be a big fan.
So James, do you think you've become more apocalyptic, and are you writing an apocalyptic book of James with what you just said? In some ways, like thinking that?
I'm still a huge fan of Godzilla. I love Godzilla. I love Godzilla 2000, the greatest Godzilla movie ever made. At the end of it, they say, "What is Godzilla?" And the other guy, he says, "Godzilla is that something in all of us which we want to suppress." And the camera turns over to Godzilla, and he just lays freaking waste to like 15, 16 blocks of city, just burning them on fire. I love the avarice of man being brought down to living junk. Yeah. I do have that nastiness inside of me.
Yeah. So in your mind,
have to make it an effort to keep it subdued.
Yeah. So in your mind, you're becoming more awakened and more apocalyptic to where you're in essence writing your own book of James in some way in your mind, right? On how you wish it would turn or how you see it going, right?
No, I'm beginning to see the wisdom of the Maccabee. Hanukkah hit me hard this year, like a hammer upside the head. You know, that's always, you know, because it competes with Christianity, it's always looked at as a very gentle, genteel, loving, sweetness. Oh, they're beautiful little lights, and they're just, and they're little menorahs. Isn't it just a pretty sweet thing? But what it's really saying, that is a warrior's holiday. That is a warrior's victory. And
it's turning into Pinkus.
That's a temple colonic, and I believe in the colonic. I think now more than ever, the fit's going to hit the shan. I don't care what there's a nastiness, you know, and any decent classical liberal would see this. There's a nastiness festering, and it's like a last ditch effort to gain claws and dig its claws deep into the earth. Now or never. If you're a warrior of light of any kind, now's the time. Now is the time.
You don't know how true the things you're saying are.
Absolutely.
Well,
the storm
thing, it seems to work. I go for it.
The storm has started.
Welcome, Tom.
Welcome, Tom.
Welcome.
There is a storm, I think.
It is already started. We will see it more clearly very soon.
James, can I have mods, please? Hello. Okay. Thank you.
It was either get your mods or get to the microphone. And,
okay,
you know, for some odd reason, going dead air wasn't a
dead air silence scares me because I don't know if I get knocked off or not unless I don't hear anybody say anything.
When idols shatter. When idols shatter. Whether and I brought up that if we get anything out of Parsha Bo and the previous Parsha, that is God idol smashing. And that's what I love, the poetic notion of the God Exodus and Kings, gods and whatever. The movie with Christian Bale. I know we can all, you know, I know it's not his. It's an art form. It's a painting. Is what that is. I loved that part where Moses is so frustrated. What do you need me to do? We need rah. We got to go rah. You know, he was very much like me. Rah, where are you? Let's just waste him. You know, he just do something. And God said, sit back and watch. It's my turn.
Now it's a professional.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate in your face love Hashem.
All you have to do, all you're going to have, just watch. Just watch.
But wait,
this is on me, Moses. Don't worry. You just kick back. Here's your lazy boy. This is on me, baby. And I said this at opening up the hangout. I understand the Passover Seder. I understand why we take wine and make 10 drops of blood to remember all of the blood that was shed for our freedom. With that said, I don't want to say that I don't, a lot of Egyptians had to die. A lot of Egyptians that probably did nothing wrong in their lives. Their firstborn were lost. If you think, if you think that's sad,
Jewish firstborns were lost as well.
Right. The same thing happened. So just remember that what I'm saying is not that I want to go after anybody personally for belief or for creed or for religious association. However, what is God telling us in this right now today?
Hey, man, I think we're just on a bubble. Something's going to make it burst. I don't know what's going to cause the burst, but it's definitely a teetering bubble situation right now.
What do you mean teetering bubble?
What's going on in France isn't helping.
I mean, it's just a lot of stuff. Like you got, obviously the stuff over here going on. You have the whole. There's just a lot of stuff going on in the world. I don't
Can you name
feel
a specific thing?
Okay, you got I don't know. You have the conflict in Syria.
You got the yellow vests in France.
Yeah, you got the yellow vests in France. You have the conflict
What
in
is
Syria.
the yellow vest?
You have you have
Oh, you talking about the striking workers?
Yes.
Yeah, and then you have obviously this border wall situation. We're in the middle of a government shutdown. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that could go left real bad.
Yeah, and even in America with its support to Palestine, a non-existent nation.
Yeah, well, Trump is showing them what it's like to be a wall.
I don't think America support. You think America supports Palestine?
I think we just elected a woman who accuses American Jews of dual loyalty, but when she was elected into a United States congressional office, what was her name?
Tlaib.
Rashia, what's
the impeachment,
wrapped herself up in the Palestinian flag when she was when she gained an American.
I mean, isn't she Palestinian?
Is she a Jew?
No, she was born in New York.
An Israeli flag, and I'm not talking about.
I've got a general statement about that. Wouldn't it be best?
Born in New York in '76.
Hey, what about this? How about when people get elected to serve to represent us in our government? Then rather than lay their hand on some ancient,
you don't have.
It
doesn't matter. It does. You don't have to put your hand on anything in order to be sworn in.
I understand.
That's not a law.
She put
it right. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You took an oath of office to the United States of America. You don't wrap yourself in the flag of a foreign enemy, or for that matter, any freaking nation. I don't care if it's Canada, Mexico. I don't care if it's the state of New freaking Jersey.
Do you think people would get upset if she did wrap herself in a Mexican flag? I don't think so.
She's not Mexican.
I know, but if somebody did wrap themselves in a Mexican flag or even a Canadian flag.
Yeah, there'd be issues.
Yeah, you're an enemy. Don't take your banner and shove it. Put it on your wall. Put it in your garage. Fly it in your front freaking yard. Wear it on your goddamn chest.
If she goes,
we do not. No, we're not here. You're not coming up here to honor Mexico. If you're entering into our country and you're wearing a foreign flag, I consider that an act of aggression, not war, because you have nothing behind you.
It's treason for her.
Wait
a minute. She is born in New York. She's an American citizen.
She needs to wrap herself up in a Gadsden.
Is her parents? Is anybody from her family from Palestine? Like Palestinian?
It doesn't matter. She was born in New York.
I know she was born in New York, but it's like
she's an American.
Like here in Chicago, there's a large Polish population up there.
If they wrap themselves up in the Polish flag, I'd kick them in the nuts.
But I don't.
If they were representing this country, yes.
No, this is the United States of America. You can fly your flag on your front yard. You can fly it on your body. You can fly it in your garage. You can fly it on your lawn. But when you are elected into office, when you become a representative of Americans, you need to keep that shit down. You're no longer an Italian. You're no longer a Pole. You're not a Mick. You're not a Dago. You're not a Jap. You're nobody. You're an American. You're a human. And if you're gonna put yourself in anything, you don't wrap yourself in the American flag. You can do that in Britain.
So where did she wrap herself? She was in the Congress room.
You want me to show you the flag? I'll send you footage.
Yeah, I mean, where does she do that at?
After she got sworn in, she wrapped herself up in the flag.
They wrapped her in it, and it was this big thing, a big deal. And
that was a little controversial. I mean, okay.
She's one of the Congress.
I don't have a problem with her wrapping herself in the flag, but it does seem she was trying to.
Plus, she misrepresented.
It was a kind of a publicity thing at that point.
Yeah, if it was, if it was the Japanese flag, or if it was the Vietnam flag, or if it was the Nigerian flag, it'd be one thing. But when you're sitting there, attacking Jews, flying the goddamn Palestinian flag, no, I'll tell you this: what we said to the North freaking Ireland's over there. You can take your goddamn bloody war and go fuck yourselves up your arse over there in Ireland. Take your war.
Yeah,
I'll say this. No. I want to say this about the Muslims and Jews too. You want to take your Israeli Palestine shit? You want to fight Israelis over here? Take your shit over there and go and take a bullet. Get the fuck out of my country. We don't need your civil war. That's not our war. I don't give a flying fuck. Take your shit and get the fuck out. I'm sorry. Red, white, and blue, stars and stripes, stars from the banner first. End of story. That's who we are. If you want to put something else above it, great. Get the fuck out and go. Or don't get elected to office to represent the Constitution, which is an absolute opposition to anything that ever came out of Palestine, save Jewish Palestine from 1922. Fuck Palestine. Doesn't even fucking exist. You want to crap in your hand and hand it to somebody?
Me how you really feel,
Palestine.
please.
That's what you do. When you talk Palestine, you get up on a stool, you squat, and you shit in your hand. And then you throw it to somebody and say, this is history. And with our generation now, with thanks to Generation X and the fucking baby boomers, we have just enough people in America stupid enough to believe it.
Okay, can I talk now?
Yeah, I'll shut up now.
Guys, I'll give that rant.
Fuck Palestine.
That was a good rant.
All right, good rant. Supposedly, the rumor has it that she doesn't even live in the district where she was elected. Her father does. So the thing is, if she ever goes to Palestine, they'll end up killing her. Because number one, she's a woman. And number two, she thinks she can pull off what she thinks she can do here in the States. She's got a rude awakening. They'll kill her.
I'm trying to figure out why she put herself in a Palestinian flag. I'm trying to see why she would do that.
Because because her father and her family that she supposedly represents is the area over there in Dearborn, Michigan.
She's a Jew-hating cunt. End of story.
All right. I draw the line.
Yeah, I'm looking up her history. I'm trying to see why.
Dearborn is all Muslim.
Yeah, it's all Muslim.
And the thing is that the rumor has it that she does not live in that area, but her father does. So she should not be even representing that area. She misrepresented herself. So that alone, right there.
Okay,
there are plenty of
her parents. Her parents are Palestinian.
Her parents were from Palestine, but they've been over here since the 70s. Okay,
right.
She was born in New York in 76.
I know, but it's like that's. I mean,
so look, she is a native-born American.
Look, people from Poland will have Polish tattoos.
I know, but they're not representing their country right after they got sworn in.
I get it, but I do think culturally people
can stay a big deal. You know,
it's not cultural. Palestine doesn't exist. It's a joke. It's an invention from 1967. There's not a goddamn shred of history about Palestine.
It's a new.
You know what's Palestine? Jews.
Didn't Herodotus used to call that area Palestine?
There's no nation. There's no king. There's never been a leader of Palestine. There's no king of Palestine.
It's just a place. It's a place called Palestine.
It's not a goddamn culture. Stop that bullshit.
No, I'm not saying it's a culture, but
fuck that shit, dude. I will boot you.
Back in the 1800s, that's what England did. England and all of them, when they had control over it, started calling it Palestine. But the Palestinians of that time were all Jewish.
It began with the Romans.
Right, but they were all Jewish.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying.
When the Romans destroyed the second temple and they took everybody and everything out of the land, they renamed it and put it on the map as Palestina Aletina.
Mm-hmm.
The Palestinian moniker stuck because of what the Romans had done.
Right. I knew it happened sometime. I mean, it's just Palestine. I mean, I'm not.
It's not Palestine. That's what the Romans renamed it. It's always been
Israel.
I mean,
Israel.
well, it's. I mean, well, if you
Wait.
go far,
Hold on.
if you go back far enough,
Let me
it's
step
called
in here a
Canaan.
little bit. Hold on.
The
I mean,
Hebrew word for invaders. That's where the word Palestine comes from.
All right.
Well, let's just call the place Canaan then.
Here, wait a second. No, Asher hadn't spoken, man.
All right, hold on.
Go for it.
In the Torah,
welcome, by the way, shalom.
Okay, no problem. In the Torah, it calls a portion of what we call the land of Israel Palestine. And I'm going to find you. I mean, I made a whole video on it. I mean, people, for sure, where there wasn't an independent nation called Palestine, but it was known as the land of the Philistines, and it was called Palestine in Hebrew in the Torah. But I'm going to give you the quote now. Just let me find it. I mean, I have a video that I'll post in the chat also. But
yeah, I mean, me saying, hey, there's a Palestine doesn't mean, hey, I'm just for everything that's happening in Palestine. I'm just saying, when people are from a particular area, they take a sense and pride in where they're from. You know, like, you know, Mexicans here, Canadians here, people from Italy, Irish. They'll have cultural stuff around their house that relates to their thing. You know, so if she's Palestinian and she got a Palestinian flag, I mean, I get it. I could understand why it upset people.
Yeah, but it changed when she came to work for the government of the United States.
I mean, people that work, there's Irish, there are Irish senators.
Keep a T-shirt at home, that's fine, and wear it under your dress or whatever.
No,
but
I'm
when
saying,
you work for the United
States,
everybody understands what you're saying.
Celebrate.
We just disagree with you.
Here's the thing. Palestine isn't even a recognized nation in the United Nations, yet the United Nations make it the leader of their biggest voting bloc. It doesn't exist. There is no Palestine. It's a region. Canadians are American. Mexicans are American. Brazilians, Colombians are American. That's I mean, if you want to call that Palestine, shoot. Panama, that's an American place. Honduras, that's an American.
Well, the place, I guess, they're from Gaza, I would say, right?
No, that's a whole nother bunch of hunk of bullshit. That UN, fuck the UN. I hear they're running out of money. I think that's the greatest news I heard all week. Is the UN is now proclaimed we are running out of cash. That makes me happier than a pig in shit, man. I'll shut up. Go ahead.
I mean, look, hey, I put it like this. That's a very look, that conflict over there is a very complex issue. I don't know how it'll or when it'll be resolved. It does need to be resolved, but it's easy. I don't really blame either side too much.
It's easy. In 1922, after World War II, after the fall of the Byzantine Empire and the Ottoman Empire, the Brits were over there and says, "Okay, this is Palestine," and then all the Arabs went nuts and said, "What is saying? Whoa, don't lump us in over here with these people over here who share Muslim and Jewish culture," which is a blatant record well before happening in Israel. It was the exodus to Israel already started back in the middle of the 16th or 18th century. It was already happening. There were already Jews there, and so what did the League of Nations say? Okay, we'll give up 78% to the what we call the Transjordan, the Arab Transjordan, and then we have Jewish Palestine. They took the region of Palestine, which was declared a region by empires well before the Brits, and said, okay, we'll have the Arabs will have their state like they want, and we'll let the Jews have their state. The Palestine notion didn't come about till 1967. It was an invented culture. It doesn't exist. It just started. Fine, but they can't elect a leader. They can't elect a Knesset or any kind of Congress. They can't unify in any way, shape, or form. And well over half of the Palestinian peasants, and I say that word with utmost respect, doctors, lawyers, barbers, these Palestinian people are siding with Israel now. They've gone before the EU bit and said, "You're full of crap. Stop this." You know, Israel has had its flaws, but so do we, but they're far kinder to us than any of these other warlords who've been running around telling other people how to live, like we've got in the West Bank and like we've got in Gaza, which is about done, thank God. That we need to retake Gaza now.
I've seen the stuff. Look, whatever happened in the 20s, whatever. I think
it's binding when the when the League of Nations, when the world unanimously agrees, we're going to agree with this, and then 29 years later, we're going to Indian give them. The United Nations is going to come and say, "Oh, well, we have to partition your land even more." A whole generation after, half a generation after that declaration, and it was decided. Fine. Well,
I'm addressing.
You can't repartition that, man.
I'm just addressing the current situation, right? Like currently, how it got to where it is. I mean, I don't know if we can do anything about that.
If I may,
how it is now, they have to figure out a way to resolve that.
You're here, Rosalie. Go ahead.
Thank you. Oh, who said?
Yeah, that was me.
Yes, sir. Please.
I slugged it out with Muslims on Stickam a few years ago to get to the heart of why Muslims think that they have any right to Israel, or specifically Jerusalem. And it comes down to the fact that Jerusalem was once under Islamic law. And according to Islamic law, if any land was once under Islamic law, then it must be liberated if it falls out of Muslim hands. So even though the Quran and the Torah and all these Abrahamic sources say that Jerusalem belongs to the Jews, it's because it was once under Islamic law that they believe they have to liberate it.
Yeah, I can see. But there has to. I mean, they gotta fix that situation over there somehow. Like, I'm not. There's plenty of fingers to point at it all over the place, but I think somewhere down the line, the finger pointing got to stop, and they got to figure out how to fix that over there, because it's a little messy over there right now.
The solution is pretty much. Ash, if you want to talk, please go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, I didn't say anything. But, I mean, as someone who's lived in Israel for 5 years, I mean, I was there when they exited Gaza. I mean, most people don't know that the reason there's such an upheaval on what to do with the Palestinians and whether to give the land back or not is because the vast majority of the Jews who live in Israel don't want the West Bank and don't want the Galilee, and and for sure don't want the Golan Heights. Like, most people think that the average Israeli is as right wing as whoever appears on Israel National Radio, and it's not true. That's probably maybe 20%, maybe. Right, the vast majority of Israelis are left wing, and there's organizations like Shinui, like Shalom Akshav, Peace Now. These are Jewish organizations that are pro-Palestinian. So it's not the UN, it's the Jews who are Jews have always been their biggest enemies, so we shouldn't point our fingers at the UN. It's true. Arafat in 1967 first quoted the term Palestinian to refer to themselves being descendant of an ancient people that did live in the land. And it appears in Exodus chapter 15, verse 14, and 4 other places in Tanakh, Palestina, that place specifically like the region of Tel Aviv, because the Palestinians were a seafaring people, right? But not actually what the latest studies are that the Muslims that currently inhabit the land of Israel today, around 75% of them have Jewish blood, and Jews love the land so much that they decided to convert to Islam, then leave during the Islamic Caliphate, right? So it's even what Gaddafi has relatives in Haifa. Like, most people don't know that in that region, there's so much Jewish blood. I mean, not that it matters. I mean, these guys don't keep Torah. I mean, they're not any more Jewish than like any other Gentile, right? But it's like our anger shouldn't be at the Gentile nations, or our anger should be at the Jews. I mean, the vast majority of Jews in America are anti-Israel.
Thank you.
So it's something. It's an ignorance only repeated over and over again by Christians who don't know any better, and they think that poor little Israel. I mean, Israel created their own problems, and becomes a bigger problem when we start saying that secular Jews are our brothers, and there's unity. There's no unity in Israel. It's the biggest, bipolar nation what there is out there.
The biggest gay pride parade was in Tel Aviv. It was like
Tel Aviv is the gay capital of the world. It's just past Amsterdam. Most people know that Israel performs twice as many abortions per capita per year within the U.S., and it has probably 3 times as many homosexuals. So it's
and those abortion numbers are it's hard to get an abortion in Israel.
No, it's not. It's very easy.
And yet still,
like soldiers in Israel get 2 free abortions, taxpayer paid abortions a year.
Crap.
I remember the right-wing politicians in Israel don't even campaign on notions of pro-choice and pro-life, because everybody knows that even those who are on the right are pro-choice, even Orthodox Jews.
That's disgusting.
Remember, I lived in a Haredi,
West Virginia,
and even Haredi Jews were getting abortions, because now there's a liberal streak in the Haredi party that teaches that if you want to get an abortion, but you just get a heter from your Rav, because there's an opinion, a twisted opinion, by the Yavitz, Rav Yaakov Emden, where it says that it's not only for the life of the mother, but it's for the health of the mother. So just because he mentioned the word health, that opened a whole new world, because now that includes mental health, right? If the woman says, I can't handle it because I'm going to go nuts, the rabbi says, fine. The baby is considered a rodef, right? He's out to take your life in some weird way. So now they're performing abortions left and right. I wouldn't feel sorry for the Jewish people. I feel sorry for those who keep Torah, and get lumped in with those who misrepresent Judaism. But the reason religious Jewish people suffer is because they're paying for the sins of the secular, and not in a spiritual way. It's because religious Jews fail to kick out secular Jews from the fold. So when Gentiles come to persecute, who are they going to attack? They're going to attack those who actually look Jewish. And who's that? Well, the religious. And this is something that, in my opinion, is the biggest downfall of mysticism, because mysticism made the Jew feel that what separates the good from the evil is either having a Jewish soul or not having a Jewish soul. So they started walking around saying that even a secular Jew, an atheist, a communist, is as much of a Jew as I am. So, when they go,
Jews do own Karl Marx. They do own Karl Marx.
When that owned, Karl Marx was Jewish. Friedrich Engels was Jewish. Trotsky was Jewish. It's true. This is actually what actually caused the Holocaust, right? Hitler was angry at communistic Jews. Even Winston Churchill mentions it. The atheistical communistic Jews of the Red Scare of the 1920s. He didn't care about Jews keeping mitzvot and wearing tefillin on their heads. No. But when he went after the Jews, who is he going to attack first? Those who actually look Jewish. And we end up paying for what the secular people do. In America, those who hate Jews don't hate us because we keep commandments. Well, they hate us because we're the biggest proponents of abortion, liberalism, feminism. Heck, the author of the
loud ones seem to get to the Gentiles quicker, don't they? It shocked my family when I guess it was 10, 12 years ago, when they were having a gay pride rally out there in California, and a boatload of yarmulke wearing, payas showing, Orthodox Jews showed up in opposition, and they were shocked. And for me, being kind of a stupid to the whole thing, I thought, well, of course they're there. And I had to learn the hard way that a lot of the louder Jews that hold prestige in the Western elite have nothing to do with Torah. They might be that, I can understand, liberalism and the need for acceptance. And
well, to kind of just highlight a point, if you will, on the liberal, the left, some of these names I'm sure are going to sound familiar, but Schumer, I don't know if you know it or not, Schumer is Jewish.
We got a schmuck in Congress named Jewish, or named Schumer.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Chuck Schumer, Dianne Feinstein, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Okay, the list goes on. And
Barry Sanders.
Jewish though.
Sure.
Yeah. So you have that. Then you have other prominent figures. One named Anthony Weiner. We all know what he did.
Oh man.
Then there's
Anthony Weiner, man. Why did he have to have that name? Out of all the names to have with his situation.
Well, then there's Mr. Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein. I mean, it runs the gamut. It's not just politics. It's entertainment. It's everywhere. It's a lot of people. And this, like he was saying, the liberal left and the communism, the socialism, all these isms that they seem to gravitate towards. And you see where we are today.
Yeah.
Okay, but I don't think that Jews are doing this. I think this is something that Gentiles are doing, because in the 70s you had Jewish celebrities, and although they were like assimilationists, right, pushing assimilation, they were still somewhat respected. But nowadays, Jewish celebrities aren't even really supposed to even mention the fact that they're Jewish. And it's only the scapegoats, the evil, corrupt people that are getting put forth in the news as being Jewish, so that the image that we get of Jew is now someone who's evil, right? You don't even get like moderate Jews in the limelight anymore in this country, and that's because Gentiles are doing that. Gentiles are propping up those scapegoat Jews. That's not Jews doing that.
Yes, I mean three of the men that I really grew up loving, absolutely loving most: Larry Moe, and Curly, and the other brother Shemp, all Jewish. Okay, and it wasn't until later in life that I found out that William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy were both Jewish. So yeah, I've had my share of heroes and people that I've admired and looked up to, and I didn't really know that they were Jewish, but even after I found that out, great. Another man that I greatly admired was Albert Einstein. Okay, so
made me laugh.
Yeah, but I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush. It's just that the isms, the communism, the socialism, the liberalism, that's the destructive force.
Yeah, they all have one thing in common. I mean, they come from irreligious people who call themselves Jewish. So I mean, ultimately, they're not Jewish. And the more ultra-Orthodox make that point constantly, that secular Jews, I mean, before World War II, when a Jew dropped Judaism, the parents would sit Shiva. In other words, it's only post-1948 that the Jewish people and the Jewish nation became a nation like France and Ireland became a nation. In other words, it's no longer about belief. It's about ethnicity, which, I mean, according to Torah, right, I mean, according to Torah, if you do such and such, it says you shall be cut off from your people. So according to Torah, once a supposed Jew, not always a Jew. I mean, the term Jew doesn't even appear in Torah in terms of an identity. The Torah separates people by those in the covenant and those not in the covenant. And Torah goes on to say that one could break the covenant, but now we sort of lump it all in together under the umbrella of Jew. But what does that mean? Right? Like, you could be with the leading atheists were Jewish: Carl Sagan, Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, like Christopher Hitchens. Is it a coincidence? All, individuals that mystical Judaism, because it's only mystical Judaism that fails to separate people like by behavior and just lumps them in because of blood. Blood means nothing ultimately, right? And there's rabbis now.
Unless you're a priest.
Sorry.
Unless you're a priest.
No. Well, even if
We
you're
get-
a priest,
we get Messiah in the priesthood, and that's about it as far
Unless
as
you're a Cohen.
blood's
no,
concerned.
yeah, even if you're a Cohen, like you could be what's called like mehalal. That means like if you're a pagan atheistical Cohen, like you lose the kahuna, or the line ends with you. Like if a Cohen marries a divorcee, his children are no longer Kohanim. In other words, it's the office that's respected, but only when the person's respectable. It doesn't make them special in general. I mean, there are many Kohanim who like behave worse than pagans do. I mean, that doesn't mean that we elevate the person. Okay, the title.
No.
Yeah.
But the bloodline is what I'm saying. The bloodline matters in certain instances.
No.
I don't want
If bloodline really matters, well, then a Cohen could not lose the kahuna. In other words, if your great grandfather is a Cohen, and he marries a divorcee, their children will not be Kohanim, even though they have his blood running through his veins.
True, but
so
only a Kohanim can be assigned to a certain office or a place in the temple. It has
If I may.
left up to behavior.
All right,
If I may.
true. Go ahead.
Right.
That alone, right?
It's ultimately about belief and how those beliefs guide your behavior, but not nowadays. Nowadays, you have Chabad standing in the corner asking people, "Are you Jewish? Not are you ethical, or do you want to keep Torah?" Right? So it seems that we kind of study a different Torah, because according to the Torah, the world is separated between those who are decent versus those who are indecent. But those who are decent keep Torah, and those who don't. But nowadays, it doesn't even matter, because those who want to keep Torah, if they don't have Jewish pedigree, they get pushed out, they get shoved away, and they're forced to become, like B'nai Noach, right? Instead of, and if you happen to have a drop of Jewish blood, you get a free trip to Israel, you get, all this special treatment. So we separate the world tribally and not ethically. And again, I constantly blame this on Jewish mysticism, because prior to the 12th century, this wasn't the case. I mean, in the rabbis and the Talmud, this for sure wasn't the case. But post the Zohar, right? It mattered, who your mother was, or the blood that ran through your veins, and it matters today because of that.
Right.
And this is why.
As another example for office, I mean, when we read about Abraham, there's mention of Pharaoh, and then you read about Joseph, and there's Pharaoh, and then you read about Moses, and there's Pharaoh. It's obviously not the same person. It's just referring to an office. Pharaoh, Pharaoh, Pharaoh. And I don't see anywhere where there's ever a name mentioned. Pharaoh Nico, Pharaoh Ramses, Pharaoh anything. It just constantly refers to the office. And a lot of that was never a continuous bloodline. Just, son, grandson, great-grandson, great-great-grandson. There was a lot of murdering, backstabbing, and ascensions to the throne through power.
When a few parshas back, and when we began Shemos, it was a Pharaoh arose who didn't know the glory of its past.
Exactly, but it never says what Pharaoh. Was it Pharaoh Achmoses? Was it Pharaoh Sennacherib? Which Pharaoh?
Yeah.
It's only referring to the office.
The title. Path. Shalom, my brother. Good to see you. I just wanted to welcome you into the group. You see the title on my little slate here of what's going on with the Parsha, theme of the group. Anything you want to chime in on? Any ideas, notions, a take on the Parsha this year you want to share? Please feel free, sir. Good to see you here. Go ahead. Whoever's next.
Is Path Yosef?
I'm sorry?
Is Path of Avraham, is that Yosef?
Yitzchak. Well, he might have a middle name, Yosef. I don't know. He's from the Great White North. He's joining us from the our wonderful neighbor.
Hey, Uziyahu. I think I remember you. I mean, you used to come to our hangouts maybe 5-6 years ago, right? I mean, you have the same picture.
You probably remember me from YouTube. Back in the days before Obama got elected, there was a lot of debate going on, and then it died promptly after Obama took office.
I'm glad you're back, because that fear of speech hopefully is I'd like to get it back. I know Google Plus is on its way out, but they're keeping Hangouts, and we have a great format here. We have a great platform for worthy of discussion of Torah, and there aren't many of them out there. So come on back. Help keep this thing alive. 5 years now we've been doing this. 5 years going on. It'll be 5 years in April when we had the first Noahide Nexus. Noahide Nexus. Yeah, I'll be damned if there's no debate, no room for discussion on this subject.
I have a question for Asher.
Sure, go ahead.
Speak your question, sir.
Okay, so how does the cutting off take place? Is that done by the Sanhedrin or what?
Nobody knows. But the Talmud gives around 8 examples of what it thinks karet means. And for example, one example is that the individual dies early or his son dies early. In other words, by a simple fact that there's around 8 opinions, it shows that the rabbis are clueless on what it actually means. So it forces us like to go back to this principle of it says ein mikra midei pitzei, I can't even remember, with that a pasuk from the Torah doesn't depart from its literal meaning. Well, the word karet literally means to be cut off, right? And it says, I believe in Parshat Netzavim, it says that God will cut you off in certain instances from above and below. But then it also says that you shall be cut off from your people. So according to the Pashat, according to the literal understanding, it seems that you're just kicked out of the tribe. I mean, you're pushed outside. Throughout Jewish history, this has been the case for people who didn't want to keep Torah. For example, like if an Israelite didn't want to keep Torah while living in the land, it would behoove him to leave if he didn't want to be put to death, right? I mean, he's not going to be violating Shabbat in front of people or eating chametz on Pesach in front of possible witnesses. So it's almost like a mandatory pushing away, in some cases, to avoid a death penalty. But
it resembles. Would it be fair to say that it would be slightly bear resemblance to excommunication?
But the rabbis don't speak on it like this. But they really don't talk about it. I mean, cherem is a completely different category, and it's not. I mean, people aren't put in cherem for breaking Torah laws. In other words, so you're put in cherem like for disagreeing with the Sanhedrin. But it's typically well-intentioned individuals who are put in cherem. Right?
Explain what cherem is real quick. What is cherem?
All right. So there's 2 forms of excommunication in Judaism. The one is called nidui, and one is called cherem. So nidui is ostracization, and excommunication is cherem. So
one would be shunned then, basically.
Right. One is more like shunned, but there's different categories of excommunication as well, because excommunication is more severe. Right. But there's one that you're not allowed to go arba amot, like around 18 feet around the individual. The most you could do is teach him Torah, just because he needs that sort of sustenance. But in a further, more severe form, he can't teach others Torah because he might be spreading his heresy. So, but there's individuals in the Torah that were put in like by Chazal in the Talmud, but that were big rabbis that were put in cherem just because they wouldn't give up their opinion. In other words, there's a famous story of Rabbi Yeshua, I believe, that he was so adamant that he was correct that he basically that God agreed with him too. And then like a bat call came down like a voice from heaven, and God made like the rivers flow backwards. He said, if I'm right, the rivers will go backwards. If I'm right, the walls will cave in and all this stuff. And then the Sanhedrin says, it doesn't really matter what God does to prove that you're right, because God gave us the authority on earth to decide these matters. So, I mean, God was almost testing like the members of the Sanhedrin to see like if they would give in. But it's God ultimately wanted with the court to stand, because it says in Deuteronomy chapter 17 that the people have to adhere to the rulings of this court, and by disagreeing with this court, it's like disagreeing with God himself. So that's typically what people are put in excommunication for. But yeah, I mean, like things like breaking the Sabbath, there is an excommunication because there's death penalties that try, attached to that. So it's typically for trivial legal matters. Yeah. Next question.
Okay.
So given that Israel was founded as a secular state,
yes,
I mean it's kind of like the seeds were planted, almost like when Joshua didn't kill all of the indigenous peoples in the region of Israel, so that those seeds of, I don't know what you want to call it, were there that later became bothersome.
That's what we have now. I think we have that in the God-fearing community. I don't want to place blame. I don't want to. I'm not here to chastise the living for the deeds of the dead, but the dead did plant the seed. And it's getting a little out of control.
Most people don't know that the vast majority of Orthodox Jews are actually not Zionists. Like they're what's called non-Zionists, not anti-Zionists. We're really splitting hairs here. An anti-Zionist would be groups like Satmar and the Torah. And even there's a difference between there, because Satmar would never march alongside Palestinians, while no Torah will. Right? The non-Zionists are just like your average black hat Jew that will live in Israel and take advantage of all the benefits of having a Jewish country and a falafel shop in every corner, but they won't endorse the government, right? And there's even many religious Zionist Jews that don't endorse the government. I remember when I was in Israel, there was this organization called the Kingdom of Judah, or is it the Kingdom of the State of Judah, something like that, that they were trying to break off and start a religious part of the country. And they were typically like the hilltop settlers, like in the settlements, right? So even those who consider themselves religious Zionists, in the vast majority of cases, at least in Israel, they don't support the government. So they may love the land, and like be big Rav Kookniks and like believe that their job is either to kick the secular out or to invest a lot of time and effort to try to make the secular religious. But the vast majority of religious Zionists also don't endorse the government itself. I mean, like Bibi Netanyahu is not a religious Jew, right? Even though like many people walk around like he's the Messiah, right? But this guy is not, I mean, at least by Orthodox standards, he wouldn't be considered observant.
We have to do it the Gentile way if we're going to get anything done. I mean, take what we can get, right? When I hear that a great deal of Israel was supported by and founded by socialists. Bolsheviks is a great example. Russia, of all people, Russia, the Soviet Union was very happy and very supportive of the state of Israel. Maybe for the Jew bit, I don't know. But the fact that they were a socialist nation, take it. Whatever makes the goyim happy, take it and make it your own, right? I mean, isn't that the ultimate goal of what we call Zionism today? The true root of it, the Jewish root, the Hebrew root, not the socio-political, but take the land and make it good and do something with it and
right.
Be fruitful. But bring flowers and fruit.
to argue the other side a little bit, right?
Okay.
Because most people don't argue the other side. I mean, most of the rabbis you see on YouTube, or especially like in the Noahide camp, are pretty cookie cutter. I mean, they teach one segment of Israeli politics, and that's religious Zionism. You know, like flag waving. You know, like Bibi Netanyahu endorsing religious Zionism, but the vast majority of Jews don't actually don't have this position, and I'll tell you why. Well, the reason why it's almost impossible. Now, I consider myself a secular Zionist and a religious anti-Zionist. In other words, I believe in the establishment of the state of Israel, but just like I endorse and believe in any democracy that fights for its right to exist and is a bastion for Jews all over the world. I mean, I endorse this, but I don't endorse religious Zionism. So religious Zionism means that the state of Israel as it exists today is a resurrection of biblical Israel and is the first flourishings of the Messianic age. Now, it's kind of hard to endorse this when the vast majority of the country is secular, right? You know, when it was founded, like you said, by communist Jews, with the kibbutzim, where these little kibbutzes were these socialist enclaves that this country was founded upon. And then when they started going bankrupt, they changed their whole system, which is why the Soviet Union dropped its support and then America started endorsing it. But most people don't know about this history. But the reason I say that, at least according to the Torah, it's hard to be a religious Zionist is because the Torah clearly says that when God puts you in exile, only God could bring you out of exile. Right, so that's pretty clear, and there, like, you really have to do a lot of gymnastics to kind of justify forcing the hand of God. So it's you know, you can't force the hand of God, and there's many ways that the rabbis, at least modern rabbis, the Achronim, say that this is possible, and I think again it's also tied to mysticism too. One way is that if you get the vast majority of Jews to live in the land of Israel, this would force God in some way to bring the redemption. That sounds a bit ridiculous to me. You
can't hasten the Messiah, can you?
Well, some people teach you can. I mean, some people, like the Chafetz Chaim says that if for example, there was a national day, I think they do this every year, to bring the Messiah, and that at a specific time all over the world, everyone should pray and give tzedakah, whether the Messiah should come now. And this is clearly a movement pushed by Chabad and similar organizations. And I think it's very destructive. I mean, if you start believing this and then God doesn't meet these demands, then what ends up happening is that
it's like Shabbat around the world.
Right. Well, right. Okay. Right. So it's the same thing. In the Talmud, it says there's a medrash, there's a legend that says that if all the Jews keep 2 Shabbats, this would force the Messiah to come. So when the Messiah doesn't come, you don't leave that movement. You drop the belief in God altogether. So you set people up for disaster. And we could just stick to what the Torah says. The Torah says that once you start keeping commandments properly, God will elevate you to your former glory. But that's, for some reason, that's not good enough for us. And it says this in the Talmud. It says that, and this is another legend, this is not halacha, but it says that when the Jews went to exile, they took 3 oaths. And one of those oaths is that they would not besiege the walls of Jerusalem, and they would not war against other nations to return back to Israel. Why? And that's exactly what we did in 1948. We warred against other nations now, I understand our back was up, was against the wall. I mean, the reason we really got the state of Israel was because of the Holocaust, because the world felt sorry because it decimated the vast majority.
What about the mandate for Palestine in 1922? Didn't it have anything to do with it?
Right. All right. So the Balfour Declaration was pretty much null and void. I mean, don't forget. I mean, England.
Not the Balfour Declaration. I'm talking about what the League of Nations, signed off on was. The mandate for Palestine, the Transjordan and Jewish Palestine. Didn't that kind of nullify any of the arguments of the 40s? What you think, since the UN adopted that whole mandate? I mean, wouldn't the whole 40s argument just go out the window? Doesn't matter what you think. This is what's been agreed to by the world. Let us have it. You think?
Right. I don't think any of that was set in stone until 1948. You know, that a little sliver of the land was promised to Israel, and then in that day they were invaded, I believe, by 4 Arab nations. You know, it's I mean, ultimately, what the UN had no say, like who had what, but like when England left that region, where they left it in the hands of the UN to decide how to split it up because they were tired of wasting resources there, right? But it's really, you know, it's a shame what happened to Sephardi religious Jewry when they entered the land of Israel. In 1956, almost all, or the vast majority of Sephardic Jews were kicked out of their countries. I mean, they had all their property taken away, and they entered the land of Israel, right? And 99.9% of all those Jews were religious. And around 10 years later, they were almost all secular. By entering the land of Israel, they lost their Judaism. And this is what many people warn against when people make Aliyah. Because the vast majority of people who make Aliyah religious, their kids or their grandkids don't remain religious. Because in Israel, it's very comfortable being Jewish. And I'm not saying that it's the actual act of comfort that makes people drop religion. But when you have a country that everybody's Jewish, it's not like, you know, like you're living in a Jewish bubble like in the US and you're forced to marry a religious Jew. Here you have something that's never existed before, which is around 5 or 6 generations of people claiming to be Jewish and secular. Now this is something that's never happened in the non-Jewish world, because after the first or second generation in America or in Europe, where the kids marry out and they get absorbed into the general population, which is actually a good thing, because this is the way that you thin out and wash out the bad blood, right? If you just have Jews 5, 6 generations, you know, like Marxist supporting, left-wing supporting, you know, then it begins to change Jewish culture, you know. But if the Jew could just assimilate and become Christian, become Muslim, become an atheist, but not tarnish with the reputation of the living, observant Jews, then, I mean, that in some way is a fail-safe, a safety net that God put in there that comes as a part of as a product of the exile. You know, so this is why it's not all rosy. I mean, having a Jewish state or calling it Jewish when it's not really religious.
We have a time to go. We do. I'm going to end the live broadcast right now. We do this every Thursday live. If you want to get in on the conversation and get links every week, join us on Facebook. Join us at the Google Plus community as well. As long as it lasts, we'll be here every Thursday. The Idol Smasher YouTube page. We'll also get you links to what we've been doing for the past 5 years. The John Gishley YouTube page as well. James the Idol Smasher at gmail.com for all you fine folks out there. On behalf of everybody, Aaron, Wayman, Asher, Rosalie, Ross, who just left, Buford, and Wade, Shabbat Shalom, y'all.
Shabbat Shalom.